Woohoo! All right. Well, it is another day in paradise. And believe it or not, it's already February 21st. My goodness. It's the year is going too fast for me. We have a great guest today, but before we get rolling, we are going to have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
Yay.
I've been down this road before. I remember every tree, every bit of blade of grass hold a special meaning for me. And I remember every time and every hotel room and every song I ever sang. Guitar out of tune. And I remember everything, things I can't forget. The way you smiled on me the first night that we met. And I remember everything, the ocean eyes of blue, how I miss you in the morning light, like roses Mr. Dew.
Very nice. Very
A
nice.
little John Prime there that when I was at Northwestern, I used to go listen to him, little John Prime, who passed away about 2 months ago.
So, John Butler, the world is moving fast. We keep talking about how digital transformations seem to be accelerating. We have Roger Skidmore from EDX Tech, which is a digital twin company today. And I want to go and talk deep about all these topics. We have a good audience today. We include city people and high tech people and others. So, what's going on in the world? What's your take on the economy? What's your take on, Wall Street kind of, taking a breath? I think interest rates are coming down, maybe, but things are, like on hold. All these wars and things are
Wow.
kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
it's the world is a mess, but it's been a mess, and we need to respond to it. I think that America is still the last best hope. So we need to respond to the world. There's a lot going on in Europe. There's a lot going on over in Israel, in the Middle East, and we have to have great leaders who make great decisions about what we do. But one thing is for sure: the American experiment will continue. I cannot think of any other way, even our quote problems, where you can distribute the idea of wealth based on what people can do, especially when it comes to patents, as Abraham Lincoln would say. And we're still the place where people are trying to get into. I don't see anybody rushing to go back to Cuba or rushing to go back to any other country. I think the stock market itself was good to all of us, but what you have to learn to do is move things. And as interest rates went up, then of course you want to move stuff to the interest rate bearing, move it to CDs. But as the interest rates go up and as the stock market do all of these things, it's doing so in the context of a world that's very, very interesting. The assassination, for example, in Russia, and then we have the American presidency here. So it's a lot going on. When I think about technology, Andreas, I think about the fact of human beings. We perceive things. We perceive, for example, that the world is flat, and then all of a sudden the data shows us that the world is round. Uh, we perceive that something else is not what it is, and what we say is, "Wow, this is a game changer." But
Mhm.
technology now is truly a game changer. AI is truly a game changer. You can look at that and have the same kind of feeling that we had when we said the universe is expanding, and there are billions and billions of galaxies there. It is not just sitting there where we can see it all. Wow, what a game changer.
Mhm.
I think the technology in wireless is a wow game changer. The technology that's going to interact with that with AI is a wow game changer. And I think that when I say it's a game changer, it is like saying, what would be the business model? What's the business model when
Mhm.
the ancients discovered that the world was round? What's the business model when all of a sudden people discovered that the universe was a little different? So the more that we explore, the more we say, wow. And this is one of those times in our existence as human beings where we can say, wow. And I think it's the interaction of AI with the computer revolution that started in the 1970s or before, perhaps in the 50s with IBM. So we're at the wow situation, but our question is, what are the business models and how we will continue to provide jobs and economic stability for people?
Mhm.
Wow. There you go.
Ah,
Yeah, I think that's pretty good,
right.
John. I agree with you. Even you know, and it's I think I've almost not completely, but I'm running out of fingers to count the number of game changers I think I've seen come along in my time. And I have to agree with you. Each one seems to be more of a game changer than the one before it. And I think with AI and the advent of you know, just being able to build upon everything that's come before in terms of, you know, the accumulation of data and the way information is able to be accessed now worldwide, just at the, you know, at the touch of a keystroke. I think things are, you know, at the point to where you can literally say that, you know, we're into some in the not too distant future of the next, you know, decade is going to be a transformation in terms of where things are going to go, where technology is going to go, and the things that are people are going to, you know, things that you didn't think were going to be possible are actually going to become possible. You know, more and more science fiction is becoming a reality, and to be able to live through that's pretty exciting. So I'm pretty jazzed over where things are going myself.
Absolutely. You stop and think. You say, you know, as a professor, what are people worried about? Well, to get in graduate school, getting a PhD program in any discipline, did they really write that essay? Done by AI.
Right.
To write a book chapter, that they really write the book chapter, or was it done by AI? Our sports writer here at the Austin American Statesman, Kurt Bowles, presented a great essay, and at the end he said it was written by AI.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of questions that we need to answer. But the other kind of question is, what will AI do for our ability to explore the universe? What will it do with our ability to not be where we think we are? And with every great technology came the criminal side of it.
Yeah.
We'll have to worry about the criminal side. But what a great opportunity for the movement of information. What a great opportunity to reinvent the workplace. What a great opportunity to bring George Washington back alive and just talk to him. What a great opportunity. Can you imagine with me that all museums are now very, very alive?
Uh,
So you go to the, I don't know, the NFL museum and you want to talk to Roger Staubach, but Roger Staubach just talks and answers questions.
yeah.
Can you imagine recreating Austin, Texas in the 1800s and listening to people? So I think that's where we are now. So it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to be out and about and thinking about the business models in a very, very different way. Let me just remind you that even in the computer revolution, everybody, all regions did not really, what can I say? They did not take advantage of it. So we had Boston and Route 128 in Boston. We had Austin, Texas. We had Silicon Valley. Because they never quite understood the place of science and technology before the business world, of computer engineering, the impact of computer engineering on the business world, the impact of traditional engineering, and perhaps the replacement or the augmentation of mechanical engineering with other types of engineering. And in order to move the economy forward, we must understand the relationship between technology transfer, that is, what happens in the laboratory, and the creation of new opportunities. And that's one thing I think that only a few in the country have really understood. It is science and technology that creates the business models and that change the business models. As the great Austrian Schumpeter would say, it's all about science and technology and creative destruction. Everything will be destroyed. And the question is, hey, do we have enough capital to go forward?
Mm-hmm.
If I get very academic here, Andrea, so when I discuss the history of economic thought, for example, and we look at equilibrium theory, one thing about it is that they never knew what to do with profit. Marx said that it was stolen from the working class. It drove economies crazy because in the economic models, profit does not belong. But in Schumpeter's model, profit is a necessity. As a matter of fact, in Schumpeter's model, profit is a cost. It's a cost for creating the future. So it's not in the Marxist sense of being stolen from the worker. It is not something that should be ignored by mathematical models in traditional economics. It is what makes our companies and new companies survive in the future. So let's stop looking at profit as something that should be thrown away or looked down upon and saying, boy, these companies are very profitable. Thank God for the profitability of Microsoft. Thank God for the profitability of Facebook, because they can be whatever they want to be. So profit is the cost. It is a cost of surviving the future and the cost of creating new jobs in the future. And I think that we need to get away from equilibrium theory in our models and go to a more predictive way of understanding things. And the biggest thing for us is profit. Because if you didn't have the profit to switch from typewriters to computers, you were dead. If you didn't have the profit to switch from horse and buggies to the combustion engine, you were dead. I remember my Olivetti typewriter. Oh, what a great typewriter it was. Oh, it came in all kinds of colors, green, but they disappeared, you know?
So
And then,
Johnny,
yeah,
it's a great intro to where things are heading, and where Roger, who's a serial entrepreneur, created EDX Wireless long time ago to do wireless design of networks and all this stuff. And I joke to people that without him knowing it, he was building the AWS equivalent to the Amazon retail business that he's now selling as a digital twin platform. And as we move forward into digitizing every asset possible for every industry, for every customer segment, cities, utilities, building owners, infrastructure projects at large of any kind, energy, water, transportation, communications, that all these assets need to live in the ones and zeros world, and somehow you have to correlate them. So Roger, tell us about your platform, what's going on, who is using it, why are they using it, why do they care?
How much time do you have there, Andrea? I can talk about this for the next 3 hours here. So, but yeah, so that one of the principal premises of EDX is essentially that, ultimately everything is connected. If you live in Austin, Texas, everything that you do affects everybody else around you. So we're at a point in time in history, it's never been easier at any point in time in history to collect information, to collect data. In fact, there's ones and zeros piling up behind me as I speak right now about something. It's never been easier to collect information, but being able to really make use of it and analyze it and effectively incorporate it into problem solving, or effectively incorporate it into, advancing business like John just went through. That's really, the next phase in terms of being able to manage this mountain of data and information that's beginning to pile up. And so EDX basically presents the premise of saying, every time over the past decade that people have invested in digitizing information and creating a digital representation of something in the real world and analyzing it and using that digital representation to make improvements to that real world thing, they've gained massive amounts of efficiencies and massive amounts of effectiveness. The end product winds up being much better than it did before they were able to do that. And so the question is, can you, to what scale can you begin applying that? Can you apply that not just to a jet engine, then ultimately applied it to an entire jet, but can you now apply that to, an entire airport? Can you apply it to an entire city? Can you apply it to, an entire state? At what level if you're collecting all this information, can you organize it? If you present enough organization around that content, and you can present it properly and aggregate it properly, you can begin dealing with very large scale type of issues, but you can also be able to zoom in and deal with the small scale issues at the same time. So EDX essentially has built a platform for digital twinning the entire planet if you want to go to that scale, but you can also zoom in and digital twin your kitchen. It depends on what scale of problem you're looking to access and what types of things you want to analyze as far as how you use a platform like ours. So we start with a physical representation of the environment, and then connect that up through APIs or other UI UX mechanisms for information to flow into that construct. It's all staged in a collaborative multi-user environment, preferably in a cloud. So any number of people can be accessing information. And then every single piece of information is instantiated as some type of 3D content within that space. And it's all renderable, meaning that at any point in time, you can zoom into any area or zoom out over any area and get fully 3D rendered information about everything that's going on in that area from the data sources that are flowing in. What that enables then is the ability of taking all these different data sources that are piling up, putting them all into one context that a human being can easily interpret, but also an AI can easily interpret because they have one spot that they can go to collect all this information from and analyze it on context. And then we deal with the nitty-gritties of, every piece of information has a location and a time. Those are two kind of fundamental pieces of data that's attached onto any piece of information. So we correlate all this in terms of position and time, keep everything up to date. And what you're left with is basically a fully operational digital twin of, the area of interest. So if you're doing like the city of Austin, you have an entire representation of the city of Austin, and you could simultaneously be looking at emergency services while you're looking at utilities, operations, while you're looking at, advertising and marketing, all within the same core context. So it basically takes you to a new level of being able to effectively analyze problems and solve problems across different paradigms. That's what basically at its core EDX is able to deliver today. And so the way we're engaging on this is in a variety of ways. We target public utilities, we target municipalities through like smart city engagements, we target public safety and government and others for end user type of customer base. But at the same time, we can target small to medium or large enterprise customers that have software solutions that need to interact within this space and being able to exchange their content information with others that are also operating in the same space. Because if you have a software application or you have a business that's doing some type of operations or delivering some type of functionality or capability to your users within the city of Austin, then think about how much more valuable potentially your solution could be if you suddenly have access to all the other information that's going on in the city of Austin that's around you that you could use just by with a click of the mouse to funnel into your application and show that type of information to your users and give them access to it in conjunction with the actual use case or the particular use case that your product's actually delivering. So EDX as a platform basically enables entities to much more easily exchange information, exchange content with each other, because we all share the same space. We all live in the same area. And so everybody's doing business or conducting whatever they need to do in a certain area, then has the benefit of seeing everyone else on the platform and what they're doing in terms of the type of content that's being exposed.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's a mouthful. Like I said, I can talk about this for days. So
let me ask you a question, a dissertation type. Let me ask you a dissertation type question.
Uh-oh.
So, if we go back to the environment, let's take Austin, which is as hilly as San Francisco. We have hills everywhere. And I can remember with Ted Rappaport in the early days talking about this and me reminding him that the Titanic's wireless was okay, but it wasn't good enough, right? So, I think if you look at that, the research literature, that what keeps you really going, then you got models about going around hills or going through different kinds of places. That is, if a place is very, very hilly, like a Greece or like an Austin or San Francisco, and the movement of data. So I can remember going to that literature a long time ago when people were testing modelers with hills, testing modelers without hills, testing modelers with oceans, testing modelers without oceans. So the software itself becomes central to how the data, of course, move around. Can you comment on the impact of the environment in a hilly section, or where there are, even in the old days, buildings, even when I went to a football game and I could not do wireless anywhere, right? Can you comment on the relationship between the structure itself, whether it's hills, whether it's stadiums, and the movement of data?
Sure. So the physical environment, I mean, most everything today is wireless is somewhat ubiquitous. People expect that they're going to have connectivity almost wherever they go. And today that's not 100% true. There's always going to be areas where you're not going to be able to get that connectivity, which is going to affect data flow through whatever system or environment that you're in. So understanding where those can occur and being able to identify, where those areas are in advance through like doing, recognizing the physical environment and planning for those, because you can recognize the effect the environment has in terms of that data flow. So from purely a wireless communications point of view, for example, understanding the environment to higher enough degree of resolution, there's a building there in the way, for example, or that hill is going to be is in between you and where equipment's being planned to be placed, infrastructure. Knowing that in advance enables the infrastructure company to be able to effectively plan around those obstacles to deliver better service. It's not 100% today. And so there's always going to be potentially issues or at least poor performing areas within an environment. So then on the backside of that, being able to capture information about where those problems are occurring as they occur, and potentially be able to automatically, mark those or identify those, can enable then kind of a second pass improvement in, a second type of rollout of improvement of coverage and that sort of thing. So a platform like EDX enables you to both plan everything in advance. You can understand the physical environment. You understand the impact it's going to have on data flow and wireless communications, for example, through a given environment. And then also on the backside, you'll have created a digital twin of that physical environment, digital twin of all your infrastructure. You can monitor all the activity continually, what's going on within that space. You can monitor all the data flow. The system's going to be able to know, hey, there's a disruption in this area. Here's where it happened, and here's where it picked back up again. And so just in the course of, the regular use of the system, it can help you to identify problem areas and then, go back through the cycles, iterative cycles of improving the performance therein. That's kind of one of the beauties of having a digital representation of the physical world that you're using for the basis of all the other activities that you're doing. You can directly take into account the impact of the physical world on what's going on. And it's not just the physical mountains, but also when you get, if I'm going to have 50,000 people in this stadium on Saturday, being able to account for that in terms of the impact that that's going to have on, this gravity well of data flow that's going to be occurring in this one location that my network has to be able to accommodate and deal with. And that's where, tying it together with fiber optic cable placement, so you can backhaul that content and data much more effectively than just having wireless content, or being able to understand transportation flow. How are those people getting to and from the stadium, and how is that going to impact communication flow along the interstate highway, for example? Being able to analyze all those things in one context, that's really fundamentally what EDX is about, being able to do that much more easily, much more effectively than you can do it anyplace else.
Absolutely. So the world, we know, has all data. We used to do that with population statistics, try to figure out what the world would look like. Now, so as you've noted, then your model will go over all sectors in the business world.
It can, yes.
It can go over all sectors in the business world. Do you see a lag in the adoption of new business models and the data that we have in certain sectors, whether it's the automobile sector, whether it's the oil and gas sector, whether it's the communication sector? And we know that, for example, that newspapers have been really, really hit. By the way, somebody just passed a law to bring back the old paper newspapers. Did you see that on CNN?
I did not see that, no.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. So how do you see the ability of people to utilize your company's data to enhance their business models? I would say that the C-suites are behind when it comes to utilizing these things. Now, I know there are certain industry that just need your data right away, whether it's crime, or those kind of things. But do you see a lag where people are saying you still have to convince people? When you have a smart city, you have all of this data now, and you can really utilize the smart city, if you will, to solve traffic problems, to solve problems where restaurant issues to advertise. If this restaurant is full, let's go somewhere else before you get there. Do you see a lag in the business model, or business people lagging to utilize data to solve problems in the future?
Well, I think that a lot of people are really still kind of focused on their industry and their vertical and what they do. So a lot of times we'll walk into like an electrical utility grid, co-op or a municipality, and they may be very, they may have a very detailed kind of map of where all their assets are, and how, where the equipment is, what the equipment is, that sort of thing. But then they don't think about how that overlaps with the wireless communication that they're relying upon for the monitoring of all their equipment and for their people to communicate with their people. They don't really try to plan around transportation corridors. They may not have a clear picture of where new urban development is occurring, or that sort of thing, where new EV charging stations are going to go up, which has a major impact on the electrical grid. So a lot of cases, what we bring to the table is kind of almost an awakening to understand there's a whole world of other data out there that we need to know about that actually has an impact on our business, but we've never been able to really effectively be able to capture it and utilize it in the context of all of our other operations. So it's basically an awakening of access to information. Another thing we hear rather regularly is, I didn't know that information was there. Well, the information was there. It just wasn't easy for you to be able to access it before. If you got to jump through like 10 different hoops to gain access to a piece of information that you probably didn't, may have not even known it was there, but it was there. A system like ours can, readily make that available and expose it in a way that's easy for people to be able to access and use. Beyond that, certainly we're seeing, across the board, I would say, and an increasing awareness of technology and data and what it can be used for, from all markets, even from like agriculture, entertainment, through public safety. The legal system is lagging woefully behind. Privacy is going to be a major factor.
Yeah.
So those are things that I think would be concern points in terms of industry and this sort of things that we're involved in are far outpacing, and the capabilities of what we're producing are far outpacing, some of the the speed that government's going to operate in terms of being able to regulate or that sort of thing. Privacy, security, crypto security, those are all things that are areas that are, I guess, concern points for me, because I don't see them keeping up with the pace of the technological evolution that's occurring, and that EDX is a part of.
Yeah, I see. I think also, Roger, that when you look at business enterprises, in our head we have a hypothesis, if you will, of what goes on, and I think that all enterprises need to develop great sets of a hypothesis that they can test with the data. So people will say, well, if I drive to Waco during this time, the traffic's going to be bad, and etc. Or if I try to sell whatever during this time. So I think what's needed among business enterprises is the old academic thing that we do in our head of a hypothesis, because we know from the beginning of computers, data in or data garbage in and garbage out, right? So we need a hypothesis to test and to see if our expectations are there as we try to look into the future. We need to move from spreadsheets, if you will, to predictive regression analysis, if you will. We need to move, and this will allow us, every sector, therefore, to create the hypothesis of how they're thinking about the world. And as you said, they didn't even know that the data are there for you to test your hypothesis.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing. Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that we're involved in directly, there's an organization called the Digital Twin Consortium that Andre is actually a member of, and it's basically an industry consortium of entities that all fall under the umbrella of digital twinning. And like most industry consortium, it has its working groups. There's a public safety working group, and there's a utility working group, and telecommunications working group, and so on. Each one of those working groups essentially is operating its own little silo. They're doing their digital twinning of the telecommunications group, but at the end of the day, like I said, all those things exist in the real world, and the impacts that they have, they all affect each other. And so there's actually an initiative right now that involves EDX that we're pushing for June through the DTC, where each working group is going to be basically plugging in their activities like a Lego set into EDX as a platform, so that, you know, the working group that's got a digital twin of a hospital is going to be plugging into, you know, our platform alongside a digital twin for like public safety, and alongside a digital twin for telecommunications and utilities. And so being able to then show all of that activity, you know, zoom in, you can see the digital twin of the hospital, yes, but you can also zoom out and see what the impact the hospital's having if there's an emergency on, you know, transportation, or what if there's a power outage, you know, being able to track all that in one context. So June is at Infocom. Actually, there's going to be a big marketing event that EDX is a part of for kind of showing how these different working groups can come together in kind of one world to show activity, and to kind of show cross correlation between simulation activities that are impactful in an individual market vertical, but then also how those can plug together and be impactful overall, you know, in the overall world they exist in.
As we would say, that mass always equal energy anywhere it is. And so why not take a page from physics and say, you know, this equation will work in all kind of business situations. I think I think that that's where we are, and I think we have to, you know, what people call data analysts. They've been around forever, whether they're psychologists or sociologists, economists, and, you know, doing testing hypothesis. So I think that's where we are, Andreas. We need to kind of concentrate on testing hypothesis for business enterprises and creating the science of a business enterprise, now that we have so much data.
So Roger, can you elaborate maybe on some of the projects, some of the initiatives, the scope of the different industries, who you're talking to, who you're working with, and just kind of rattle through that a little bit?
I mean, on a globally, the utility marketplace, in terms of being able to track, you know, the advent of electric vehicles, or at least hybrid vehicles, and e-charging, for example. EV charging stations having a dramatic impact because most utilities are not ready for the quantity of EV charging stations that are going to be occurring, or the advent of you know, increasing amounts of renewable energy sources from solar power and wind energy and so forth, being able to factor those in, and correlate, you know, where these new sources are popping up on the grid with, you know, how the grid's functioning. That's a big part of what we wind up being, our platform is looked at. In terms of smart cities, several initiatives in Seattle, New York City, Dubai, London, and other places where, you know, we basically are plugging into various industries like public safety, as well as, you know, general overall city commerce, to track flow of goods through the city, and how those relate to, you know, all the same things, telecommunications, how that relates to utilities, and, you know, how a municipality can begin planning for the future, not just in the context of how the, you know, building a new road, for example, but in the context of how building that new road is going to impact everything else that's going on in the city. You know, not just from how traffic flows, but what does that mean in terms of, you know, everything else. You know, expanding a road that's going to have more electric vehicle traffic means you're going to have more EV charging stations, which means the utilities have to come into play to plan on those, and, you know, et cetera. There's a domino effect. And so being able to accommodate, that's a big part of what we do. Those two markets are probably front and center to us, but there's also, you know, some interesting things that are going on. You know, we've had engagements where, you know, there's talk of tracking cultural information. You know, digital twinning is not just, you know, it doesn't all have to be around commercial endeavors, but also, you know, what's going on with Pacific Islands disappearing. You know, can you actually use a digital twin to track what's going on there in terms of, and the impact that's having, at the same time as you're trying to capture and store, you know, can you digital twin a culture so that for historical purposes is not lost to time? You know, being able to capture that information can be interesting. You know, and having that content, you know, think about being able to capture cultural changes or shifts or migration patterns, not just of birds, but of people, with the impact of, you know, geopolitical changes, with, you know, economic changes going on, regional conflicts, climate change, how all these on a, from a macro scale point of view, really start having impacts at the micro level in, smaller communities and localities that may be, far distant from those locations, So being able to, provide a platform for people to be able to exchange that content, I mean, that's a big part of what EDX brings to the table that I don't think you'll find anyplace else.
And also, I think when you look at underwriting, we underwrite so much. Let's give you an example. Let's look at insurance. Can you imagine all of the data that can be added to insurance when you buy a car or when you insure your house? So in addition to having stuff on you, have you had a wreck before where they want to know what's the number of wrecks that happens near you at your intersection? So the digital twin there would just be invaluable for insurance companies. And here's the big one, and I'm not going to charge you anything for this. Are you ready? Investments. Look,
Yeah.
we are so far behind because in the investment, when I talk to my investment person, we have absolutely zero human kinds of people changing their mind in those equations. Okay. Even if we look at the Black-Scholes model, the efficiency model, right, we will always have financial crisis that we don't know about because people would change their mind. So can you imagine having a sector in there that have all of the data on how people think about certain things in certain situations so that we can plug that into the stock market data and have a whole nother data piece on the relationship between human interaction and what stocks will do, what they read, and et cetera. So it's priceless. But I think if you did that, then you can fly by Elon Musk in terms of the richest person in the world.
Yeah, I think there's actually rarely a day that goes by that the word insurance doesn't come out of one of my engagements' mouths. So it's omnipresent, I would say, in a lot of the conversations I'm involved in. But at the same time, it's funny, in terms of just track. So it's just as an example, it ties together insurance and other thing. Understanding flow of goods. If you have, you create a product, that product's dependent on today. There's no major mass produced product that is completely created all at one site. It depends upon global flow of goods and manufacturing materials to flow into sites and then create things that flow into other sites and so forth. So the flow of that is and tracking all that, contemplate a system that says, I need to make 10,000 of these things within the next 3 months. Which manufacturer, which provider should I use for this? And to be able to have the system itself, from AI or other purposes, be able to say, analyze everything that's going on geopolitically, climatically, flow of goods, is the Suez Canal closed, what's happening that's having an impact, and then look at each manufacturer you've got information on that says, here's historically what they've been able to produce, here's the quality of the defects they've been able to, create, and here's what's going on with them currently. Here's what I know about other contracts that they've got that they're also trying to meet. And then ultimately within, very quickly drill down into, here's the people you should talk to get the contracts lined up, potentially even automate the whole contract process itself, to where you can guarantee here's what you're going to be able to deliver to market for goods and being able to track that. So having a digital twin at a high enough level that can capture that information globally is the only way you'll ever be able to achieve that. Otherwise, it's going to be throwing darts at a dartboard to say, I know my buddy Bill, he's not going to let me down. I'm going to go with him to buy these parts from. And, maybe it should have been Earl instead that you decided to buy from, So a platform like EDX we have conversations that's all about tracking, the flow of goods and understanding manufacturing and the flow of content from point A to point B at each step through the kind of deliverable process. And to being able to analyze that at whatever scale you want to, zoom in and you can see what's going on with that machine on the manufacturing line. If you've got it, scoped to that level of detail, or zoom out to understand what impact does that machine breaking down have on, my deliverables that I'm expected to meet, or my quote I'm expected to meet by the end of the month. And then what ripple effects that has, all up and down the chain, supply chain, and, digital twinning that to that level of detail is also something that couple that with the insurance, and you've got, it's those are conversations I'm having fairly regularly at this point.
Well, full disclosure on insurance, I was one of State Farm consultant for 22 years.
Ah, there we go.
And I used to talk to Bill King. Bill King had this idea, who was from Bloomington. What happens when cars stop bumping into each other? Right now, all of the profit, what is it, 80% profit on insurance companies comes from the auto side, right?
Mhm.
So what happens when all of a sudden, and they are, I mean, just a side view mirror where the light comes on when there's somebody in that lane has really, really decreased. Can you imagine cars never bumping into each other again?
Yeah, yeah,
So my
yeah.
point, so my point is that my bias and love for the insurance company, since they paid me so much money over the years, is that when you begin to create different models around the new technology for underwriting for insurance, then it would be very, very helpful for them, because I think their biggest issue would be, hey, there are no more car wrecks anymore.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
future.
there's this, so like, again, that gets back to where we started with, the spin of the technology wheel is spinning faster and faster. I know I had a conversation just the other day with a gentleman that, thinks that autonomous vehicles and so forth is never going to happen because he enjoys driving his car too much. He doesn't think people will accept, driving cars. Well, my grandfather used to break horses, and he rode horses everywhere. But by the time I came along, he didn't have any horses anymore. He was driving a car around. So things will evolve, and I think that the world that's coming is going to look a little bit different than what we have today from that point of view. And I think it's an excellent point that the ripple effects of that's going to affect all kinds of industry, and insurance, for example, is going to be one that's going to be pretty heavily hit at this stage.
I think so.
The other thing is, I can't really talk too much about it, but we have conversations ongoing. I personally thought it was much further off in the future, but I'm having conversations with companies that are planning hundreds of, air taxi locations, electric vehicle drone taxi locations for people, throughout out in metropolitan area, to where you can just go hop in one of these things and there's no pilot. I'd keep my eyes closed the whole way myself, but it takes off and it will take you where you want to go. Those are literally being planned right now.
Yeah, I'm on the
so
board.
it's coming.
What happened, Roger? Not only that, but they're creating landing spaces on buildings.
Yes,
For example, I
exactly.
can tell you now that the University of Texas at Austin is looking at how can they put a system on all of the buildings where people just land there and take off.
Exactly. And that pulls together the real estate, and that pulls together the insurance, and that pulls together
that technology comes out of the University of Texas, I might add.
Yeah, that pulls together. And
Yeah.
to think about that, it's not just hey, I'm going to put a landing pad on top of the building. It comes down to, can the building construction bear the weight? How do I get power there to keep the thing charged while it's sitting there on the landing pad? How do I deal with transportation to and from the building if that's not my final destination? How do I deal with communications to make sure I can track that thing all the way through space? The real estate, which buildings are better than other buildings? Can the real estate owners themselves promote their building as a landing pad, for example? And then the insurance wrapping up the whole thing. All those industries have come together with that one, relatively simple example. And being able to analyze all the content around there is important.
You might be taking engineering in Austin and English in San Marcos.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a skip and a hop. So it's I've been involved in this. It's because I was raised by George Kosmeski in this area, who thought that once something was invented, there was something coming along, and we need to start talk about the business models. But I do think that new jobs will be created. There are people who don't think that jobs will be created, but I think, given the conversation that people are having, I think new jobs will be created. As a matter of fact, Roger, I think the skills to do these jobs will go down because it'll be so technology. So you ask any pilot, what's a pilot now? A pilot is a passenger now. They don't fly the helicopters and the airplanes like they flew when I was in Vietnam, and they jump in them and hit a button and it's a game, right? So my point is that I think jobs will be created, but what a great industry to be in when we talk about the future. And for the first time, it's definitely, Roger, one of those wow things. I mean, it's definitely one of those wild things.
Yeah, I agree. And routing it back to where we started, I think that every technological kind of leap forward, so to speak, every time there's been a wow throughout history, it's always come with a spike in not only quality of life, but jobs and people being able to do things, because it brings into new industries, basically create new things for people to do. I do think that AI it may stand the chance of breaking that cycle long term, in the sense of, increasingly taking over and doing roles that, are more manual type jobs today, certainly, and then gradually, increasingly more and more technical jobs going forward. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, let me ask you this question that I had written down. As we go to meetings, academicians go to meetings and interact with business enterprise, where do we in America stand on our technology with what you do? Are we far ahead of China? Are we far ahead of Russia? Is Russia there and we don't know it? Is China there and we don't know it? Are graduate students still coming to America to learn the new things? Are we beginning to go to China to understand wireless? Where do we stand in America for the support for research that create your kind of enterprises, with comparison to what's happening in Latin America, in Europe, and other parts of the world?
Well, I think in terms of what I've seen, in terms of the availability of technology and basically the willingness to run after it with abandon, we'll call it. There's other parts of the world that are ahead of most places I see in the U.S. You go to like the Middle East with Saudi Arabia and Dubai, and there's money is just falling from trees, and that correlates to investments into activities and technology that you don't usually see here, because it's more just free flowing to do that sort of thing. But they're also planning entire cities being built from the ground up, zero, which we don't see that here. Southeast Asia, Singapore, and other places, I've seen a much more willingness to embrace technology and the way you could apply it in very specific locations and in use cases that I've had difficulty seeing here. But in terms of being able to basically accommodate, understand the business and the overall much larger perspective of the business, I think the U.S. is still in pretty good standing in that regard. In fact, most of the engagements I see, and I'm seeing a lot of federal involvement in funding these initiatives and funding the advancement technologies. I think there's a understanding that there's some catch up to be done, particularly in the AI space and some other spaces here, and the investments rapidly following that tail. So I think that positioning wise, we're in a pretty good spot. Even if in various points of space around the planet at this point in time, there's probably more technological advances I've seen being applied into the space, or being more readily to embrace those than what I've kind of seen here.
Okay, good. And do you have a section on business models specifically in your company, or do you need to hire me? Now you can answer that now, or you can call me later.
We should talk about that later. I could always use the help and advice, John. And I hear you're retired. I hear you got a lot of time on your hands now, so I might be able to get you dedicated. If you want to work 80 hours a week, I can bring you on board, because that's about what I'm putting in right now.
My gosh. I think it's an interesting question, because I think sometimes the technology, it's like the horse and buggies. We worry because we don't have the business models. That's why people worry. But if we could predict the business models out there, then you can take your company to a whole nother level. And with 512 CMG consulting attached to it, then it can really go to another level.
I can give you a very specific example. We have a engagement we're talking with in Singapore right now, to where the zoo, the Singapore zoo, Mandai Zoo, I believe it is. There's proposals there for robot sweepers that are going to sweep the entire zoo to clean it continually. For virtual tour guides, and you walk in, you whip out your cell phone, and there on your screen that follows you around is a lifelike tour guide that can speak any language that you speak, because it's automatically going to be converted into whatever language with direct plug-in to AI, like ChatGPT. So you can just naturally ask the tour guide any questions you've got, and they will respond in whatever language that you're speaking. Those are things that you're not going to find here in the United States at this point, but are readily being contemplated in other parts of the planet. And that's literally the type of technology that's here. Whether it's ready for mass production in prime time, I think might be another question. But in terms of pinpoint applications of it, I think there's a lot of test beds internationally that are really going to be putting these technologies through the treadmill, on the treadmill, to see how ready they are for kind of mass production. And when they are, it'll be an eye-opening experience, I think, for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that the business model part is really important in all transformations of industry, because people don't understand. I mean, when they didn't understand when the horses disappeared, there'll be a lot of more opportunities. They didn't understand, when the airplane came along, they could not even envision what an airport is today. I
Right,
mean,
exactly. Yeah, I think it's going to be the same thing. I mean, I was there for the internet. I was there for the cell phones. I was there for the mobile internet. With each one of those, you've seen, like, the advent of 4G and cell phones is probably one of the largest global increases in GDP ever in history, just because of the availability of mobile internet connectivity to any user that has it. Those that's really another precipice that we're on at this point. I firmly believe that. And so it's going to be exciting to see how it evolves over the next, decade at least,
and
if not
remember,
the next 2, 3, 4, 5
I was
years.
there to see Roger Skidmore come in the world. So and I saw all those other things too.
I don't remember seeing you there. I have to go back and check some of my pictures.
I was the one who slapped you on your butt and brought you in, but I had to get out of that.
Oh, that was you. I still got the mark.
That was me. Okay.
So Roger, when you look at what's ahead of you, the next 6 months, 2024 seems to be a pretty transformational year. A lot of folks are finally jumping with both feet into digitalization, decentralization, decarbonization. We are definitely collaborating and working with you. What's the next 6 months at EDX look like?
Oh my gosh. Lots of sleepless nights, I think. So we're kind of on a cusp of hope, knock on wood. I'll sacrifice my lambs later to get over the jinx I'm about to put on myself. But we're on the cusp of a fairly rapid growth at this point in terms of what's needed at the company, in terms of people I need to hire. I need to create some jobs, JB. I need to bring people on board to grow, in conjunction with also being able to just advance the technology that we have. Every day is a new conversation for the platform that we have, and it can relate to so many different industries. As the word is spreading through our activities at the Digital Twin Consortium and other engagements, I never know what the next phone call is going to bring to the table in terms of who I'm going to be talking to and what they want to talk about. So it's exciting. It's what I've been working for all these years at EDX, is to get it to where we had it in terms of adoption. I feel like that maybe the world's finally catching up to what my vision has been for what this type of technology can bring to the table and the effectiveness it can bring to the table. So we'll see. It's going to be an exciting ride. Have me on the show in 6 months and we can talk about it then.
Absolutely.
Done. Well, a lot of stuff has come out of the University of Texas and and I think that it's important to say that. It's important to say how important research is for the future, especially these days.
Absolutely.
It's important for us to understand that we have progressed as a country in proportion to the research, whether it's Kellogg's cornflakes, whether the oil industry, whether it's learning how to adapt putting out fires, which came out of UT Austin, right? Whether it's what came out of Stanford, Apple, and Hotmail. It's important to continue to say those things. And I just want to take my hat off to you as a person who understands not only the academic side, but how to convert that to a vision to provide jobs and opportunities.
Oh yeah, I think that there's a wealth of opportunities that the university is core and central to, in terms of being able to move the ball forward. It's Cheerios in my house, but the academic research that's ongoing worldwide, for all different engagements, is critical. So, you know, I'm hopeful that continued investment in those areas is definitely something that is maintained, because without that, we couldn't be where we are today, certainly. And without that, we're not going to be able to get to where we know we can get to in the future in terms of, you know, where this technology can go and what you're going to be able to do just in the next, you know, 5-10 years. So absolutely critical. I agree with you.
Good.
All right. Well, you know, always a pleasure, Roger. We look forward to the journey of EDX Tech and its digital twin platform. And here at Texas State, we are looking forward to doing more work on digital twinning. On the CMG side, we are fully engaged in many projects that will see the benefits of that platform. So we look forward to, we're heading to the Shibitech here next week in Orlando with some 10,000 colleagues to discuss the future of the power grid. It'll be an interesting trip, Johnny, to see where things are and how things are accelerating.
Oh yeah, I'm an equal opportunist. So Texas State, University of Texas, all good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Texas
All
State
right.
is really doing it now. Yes.
Oh yeah, knocking it out of the park with Andre.
All right, guys. Well, we'll talk again. Johnny, take us away.
Okay. When the evening sun goes down, you will find me hanging around. You know the night life, it ain't no good life, but it's my life. Many people just like me, holding on to old used to be, but the nightlife, this ain't no good life, but it's my life.
Woo! Thank you, Johnny.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Roger.
All right. Take care.
All right. I'll see you
Bye
down the
now.
road.
See you down the
Yes.
road. Be good.